Well, hello, and welcome to Opal City Confidential, a Starman podcast. It's me, Ross, and I'm joined again by Dave Steele from the Earth 2 podcast. Say hello, Dave.
Hello, Ross. It's nice to be back.
Yes, I'm excited. We are recording this before I record several episodes, since it's long distance. But me and David had decided early on that whenever I had talks with David or at times past that I'd have him back on, and not knowing that they were back-to-back issues at the beginning. So we're going to cover issues 5 and 6, and I'm going to take a little break from Ted, but you're going to get a little extra Ted content soon because his first All-Star comic appearance is coming up. So let's go to the pertinent data, and we'll get back to you. All right, here we are with the pertinent data for Starman, Volume 2, Number 5. It is cover dated March 1995. Executive editor is Jeanette Kahn. Cover artist Tony Harris. Great cover of Jack and Ted fighting in the cemetery. It is called Talking with David 95. It is written by James Robinson, penciled by Tony Harris, inked by Wayne Van Grawbadger, colorist Gregory Wright, letterers John Workman, editors Archie Goodwin. Synopsis for the story is Jack Knight talks with his dead brother David in a cemetery as both need to air out some old brotherly concerns with each other. Yes, it's called airing it out. Featuring Starman Jack Knight, Starman David Knight, and Opal City Cemetery is a character in this. This has been reprinted in Starman Sins of the Father, Starman Omnibus Volume 1 hardcover, Starman Omnibus Volume 1 softcover, and Starman Compendium Volume 1. Get that, folks. That's if you don't have the issues and you don't use the app, or you like to have, how's this? If you have the app, read the first 12 issues, and then you will buy the compendium because you'll want a hard copy. There's certain things I want to have a physical copy of, and I have this in 2 versions. I have the hardcover and the compendium. Well worth it. All right, now let's get to me and David talking about David. All right, so this is Starman 5. It is the first time of an annual tradition that we're being introduced to called Talking with David.
Yeah.
This was a neat concept. I mean, I remember reading all of them, and some of them are some of my favorite issues.
Yes.
Yeah, I had not read this one in a long time, but I really enjoy it. What's your take on this one?
I really like this one too. I think this is one, there's an almost quantum leap in the quality. Not quality is the wrong word. The confidence and the sleekness of Tony Harris's artwork compared to the opening issues. I think, you see it, you can tell that he's really got the measure of what he wants to do. Jack is very well defined. The expressions and stuff are all really good. It's interesting reading this one, knowing how it all plays out. Because we talked, obviously, the last time I was on, we talked about the Starman of 1951 and David's ultimate fate and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
So it's interesting reading this one, and with all that in mind, and knowing that everything that lies ahead for Jack and for David. So it's a nice one, and it's a big part of these issues that because they were supposed to be annually. Sometimes they stretch a little bit longer than a year, depending on what James was up to. But they're nice because they start to develop Jack and David's relationship in a way that obviously they weren't able to do when David was alive. And you can see the beginnings of it here. It's really nice, and I love the stylistic choice of having everything in black and white except David, who's in color.
And Jack's eyes.
That's tremendous.
Have you ever noticed that Jack's eyes are colored?
No, I haven't actually.
I'm on page 3, and he has brown eyes.
Right. Now, I have my reading glasses on today, listeners, so... Yeah, okay, I can see that just about. I can just about make that out.
And his goggles are green.
Much clearer on page 6, isn't it?
Yeah.
I can see it there. But no, it shows kind of very much how this wasn't going to be your regular superhero comic.
Yeah.
We have the opening arc, which is a very standard origin story in a lot of ways of reluctant being brought into the fold. But this is James Robinson showing you that this comic's going to be very different.
Yeah, it's just a conversation, and he throws a fight scene in, but it's just a conversation between two brothers. And like you were saying about this, where they develop David, we don't know nothing about David. David had appeared in 4 comics before he died, in his 5th comic.
Yep.
He has no personality. I mean, I haven't read the Will Payton issue, so I don't know how much character is in that.
I shall say nothing at this time.
Yeah, because I'm reading those Virgin people. I'm going to read, the only ones I've read is the Eclipso story at the end.
Yeah.
But and that Jack that really doesn't know about his brother, because his brother says it's not jealous, it's envy. You know this. You learned jujitsu just too. I was always trying to be dad, and you were being your own man, and I was envious of you.
Yeah.
And to have, so we know as much as David knows about his own brother.
Yeah.
So I think that's a neat way of fleshing out David, because Robinson knows how important David is going to be at the end.
Yeah.
And we just think he's the half-assed brother.
Yeah. It fleshes Jack out as well, obviously.
Oh, yeah.
It gives us a bit more information on Jack, where, instead of Jack monologuing to himself about how he learned Japanese, so he could catalog some Levi's, or he learned the martial art, David tells us, obviously it's in a way it's kind of clumsy, because David is telling Jack something Jack already knows, but he's doing it for our benefit, but it's done in such a way that it's conversational, that David is sort of highlighting the differences. And it's very believable. They come over as very believable characters and as brothers. I mean, I wonder, because it's not too long. It's only a couple of years since I did a full read through of the whole series. I did it during the pandemic, and when I reread it all, I realised that I had reread the last 20 issues an awful lot, because they were very fresh in my head. But I wonder how much of what was going on with David, or what would go on with David, I wonder how much James had planned out at the start. Because when Jack's sort of saying, is it a dream? Am I dead? Or are we dead? Am I dead as well? And David's like, no, it's not that. And I'm not telling you, that David knows where they are. And you just sort of think, right, we know where he is. We know what's going on. Ultimately, we know that a certain chap in a golden helmet has probably helped him in this situation. But I read it at the time, reading issue 5 for the first time in 1994, or 95, I think was it by then, was it cover dated? Yeah. They wouldn't know what was going on. And it's interesting reading that again from that perspective, but even trying to discount for that, it does set it up very well, and it's very interesting. You're sort of going, right, what is going on? Is it, if it's not a dream, if Jack's not dead? And it's a nice, long, slow burner that runs through the whole series.
Yeah, and they're each different enough. You know what I mean? Yeah. Because
we don't want to say too much about the ones in the future, obviously.
Yeah, but they are and I think not all of them, but some of them. This one, there's one at a dinner table that I think.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. One of my
I think that's one of my favorite comics in the whole issue, and in the whole series. And this one I have read up to Grand Guignol like 5 times, and I've read Grand Guignol once.
Really?
I read it as it came out. It never came out in a trade, and I've never,
Right.
And for a while I just wasn't doing long reruns. I was just reading small runs.
Okay.
This podcast is kind of like a way it forced me to go ahead and reread it. And I've read 10 or 12 issues ahead, then done a recording, and then read those issues again, to get an idea of what I want to talk about. But it's been years since I've reread this. Because I reread the trades. When I sold my trades on eBay, they were beat up.
Yeah.
They got read, and I lent those out to people.
Yeah, I think I've lent volume 1 to someone at the moment. I think I have. Kept the rest. I've got my copy of the issue of the trade that collects the Wesley Dodds issues. My friend Derek got me that signed by Tony Harris at a convention a few years ago.
Oh, that's nice. I'd love to meet him. We're having a con here, and then none of the there's only one creator I want to meet, and I've already met him. So, yeah. But what else about this? That these things is, the dialogue is. I mean, Robinson can be flowery.
Yeah, it's not too bad in this one.
No, it read to me, that whole thing where David's talking to him, read very, very much like a well-written monologue to be performed, said out loud.
Yeah.
It sounds very stagey, and I don't mean that in a bad way. Sometimes when you're trying to get a point across, you don't want to talk like the average person, because that'll be dull.
Yeah.
So you need, let's put a little flourish on it, and I think it does. Do you have a brother, or just you have siblings, right?
I have a sister.
Okay.
A younger sister. There's about just under 7 years between us. I don't have a brother.
Okay.
You've got, what was it? You told me before.
I have 6. There's 6 of us, and I have two brothers. Two brothers.
As the O'Dares.
Yeah. Well, Dad came back from the wars, and then there'd be more of us. It seemed like. But, I kind of, I have less of this, because being the 5th child, I was like, I could see this kind of interpersonal sibling rivalry bullshit, and went, I'll have issues with me and Maggie. That's just the 2 at the back end. We're going to have our issues, but we both know that their issues are really bigger.
Yeah.
Because, but I got it. I understood this. I understood it. I'm a little bit one of those people who's a little sentimental. The sentimental moments in the movie make me tear up.
Sure.
Not the overly distraught, traumatic ones. I don't really, they don't bug me. But
my sister and I got on very well. We're very close. We're very different. I think we've got a little more different as we've got older, but we still have a lot in common. We still see each other as often as we can. We went to see Scream 6 yesterday.
Oh yeah, I saw you posted it. It was pretty good.
Oh, I loved it, man. I was, I don't think I stopped screaming myself for about 40 minutes. It was terrific. She hasn't seen Ant-Man yet, so we're going to try and sort out to do that during the week as well.
I saw that last weekend with my wife.
Yeah.
She didn't ask that many questions.
That helps.
Well, we watched Loki together, and she goes, it's time travel. You either get it or you don't. So, I want to ask you something on this.
Right, sorry, yes.
Back to Starman. Did this make you predict anything for the story ahead? Were you like you said you had an idea who you thought what your thoughts were on 1951?
Right.
Did you try to guess, what is this? Is this, I thought at one point, hey, is this the end, that Jack dies in the end? And all these conversations are David reaching out from the great beyond, preparing him because he knows his ultimate fate?
Okay.
Yeah, is it that? Is it, something the Shade's doing to him? I mean, or is it just an artistic device?
Yeah, it's interesting. I'll be a little bit roundabout with how I answer that. I mentioned this to you before we started. I didn't buy issue 5 when it first went on sale. Starman was out of the JSA, was not a character that I was desperately fond of. He wasn't one of my favourites. And this series was starting, and I thought, right, I'm going to buy this because it's loosely connected. It's involving a JSA character, and just after 0 Hour and all that, I was interested. But right at the same time, the comic shop that I was working in went bust not long after 0 Hour. So I was unemployed. I wasn't working. I didn't have the huge amounts of disposable income, so I cut right back on the amount of comics I was picking up. And I picked up the first, I think, 4 or 5 issues of Starman. First 4 or 5 issues of Starman, bearing in mind including the zero issue, of course. And issue 5 was the first one that I didn't actually pick up new from the shop. I bought it from one of my former colleagues at the comic shop that I worked in at a comic fair a few months later. And I didn't properly start reading till I think issue 28, 29 had been published.
Wow.
Because by then, I had got a job and seen through and worked for a bank for a couple of years, and then come out the other end of that in a rolling temporary contract, and I got to a point where I was done with it. So summer of '97, I'd left the bank and I was doing voluntary work, which is a whole other story. And I was catching up in the comic reading because I'd stockpiled over the previous couple of years Starman, Green Lantern, Kyle Rayner, and Starman Mystery Theater. I'd let the Flash, Power of Shazam, obviously. I'd let the Flash go and the Legion go, but I spent a lot of money and time over the '97, '98 picking up all the back issues that I missed. So issue 5, when I first read it, it was running at the time that over a few weeks, or maybe not even a few weeks, when I was reading from 0 up to issue 29, and so I would have read the first couple of Talking with David's quite close together. And as far as a long-term theory, I didn't have one.
Okay.
There'd been a couple, and I just figured that it was that if anything, David was in some kind of limbo before he passed on to the afterlife, and he was just, by whatever means, was given a chance just to talk to Jack before he went. I probably wondered vaguely if the Spectre was involved. The Spectre, I think, probably would have been another title that I probably would have kept by, but hadn't been reading. So I don't remember forming a theory. I don't remember as much chat on the DC Comics message boards about what was going on with David as there was about who the Starman of 51 could have been. Honestly, I don't think I had a clue at all. So there we go. That's a very long, convoluted context giving.
Well, that's kind of cool that you had to do that. We were talking earlier, and you mentioned a little bit about you didn't read this when it, right when it came out, but that you were that bad. You were almost 3 years in.
Yeah.
And to read them, and I can imagine that because I played catch up. I think I can't remember. When I get to it, I'll notice it. It might be. I might be like right before the Ragdoll, after the circus,
because
after the freak show is when I started in it, and then I bought everything right away, kind of right away, because that's my OCD. It's like, okay.
I remember very clearly at times sort of thinking, because I wasn't reading it, I was picking it up because of the JSA connection, and I remember sort of thinking, I might just stop buying Starman, and then the Direct Currents free sheet. I remember one of my comic shop mentors, Steve Montgomery, delightedly showing me the sort of advert in that for the Starman Times Past. It was going to feature Hourman and Dr. Midnight and Green Lantern, and so look at this. I was like, oh cool. So I thought, Hourman's going to be in an issue. I'll need to keep buying it. And then it kind of, I was picking it up, but I hadn't read any. And this was around about the time Hourman appeared in Starman Mystery Theater. Kept going, and then I was thinking, I'm just going to stop buying Starman. I'm never going to read it. And then I saw the cover of the Times Past, which had Ted fighting the Mist, which I think was on about issue 18. And I thought, I'd better keep getting it then if they're doing flashbacks to the Golden Age guy. I need to get those. So I just stuck with it, and I'm so glad I did, because I remember, jumping ahead slightly, the issue where I totally fell for it was when Jack and the Shade. Was it Jack and the Shade? Yeah, when Jack and the Shade end up in the poster.
Oh God, yeah.
Which is jumping ahead, spoilers and all that.
Yeah. But I know exactly, and I know what you mean. There is the end of that story is kind of it is a point where I was like going, this is way better than I thought. I mean, I'm enjoying it, but there's something special about this story and the art. I mean, and back to what you said about, I was noticing when I was reading their earlier issues, like 1 through 4. At this point, I have not recorded an episode for 4 yet, folks. But that there is a roughness and Jack has some more square lines in his face, and there's some weird. It reminded me a little like Crazy Cat, kind of weird. And I don't mind cartoony or sketchiness in a comic book. I don't really care. Just if you pick a style, embrace it, man, and let me see what you're doing.
Yeah.
But it is more polished. The finishes, I think Van
Wade.
Yes. He's stepping up his game to match Tony Harris's.
Yeah, they obviously found their rhythm. They obviously, I imagine, were all talking to each other a little bit more and really thinking, we've got something here. We're a good team. We're working well, and it shows. I mean, it sings. It's so stark that looking at pages 2 and 3 of Jack walking through the cemetery, it's gorgeous. It's so stylized, and it's light years away from, with no disrespect whatsoever, it's light years away from what Ringo was doing in The Flash at that point, from what Darryl Banks was doing in Green Lantern, the other regular inverted commas superhero books. Compare it to what Chris Sprouse and Lee Moder were doing on the Legion. It's not to their detriment. It's just so stylistically different, and it's quite unlike anything else, really. For a superhero book, it's even different to what you would have still been getting in any of the Vertigo titles. It's almost like
it reminds me that 2-page sequence is very like, it's kind of like reading that graveyard scene in Captain America when Stranko did that one.
Oh, that's a reach. Well, I've seen that. I will have done it at some point, I'm sure.
Oh, but there's a sequence, and there's no dialogue. It's an action sequence more so. Him and Rick Jones, who's dressed like Bucky, running through it. But it kind of reminded me of that, or some just in where stylistically. But this is, I think you're right. No one was doing anything like this.
Yeah.
Not and in Vertigo, I don't think. I mean, what was coming out? Swamp Thing was out, yes.
Swamp Thing was Animal Man. I was reading. I think I was still reading Animal Man by that point. Hellblazer was. I think I'd stopped reading Hellblazer. I didn't read Hellblazer for long. Who was it? Was it Jamie Delano? I think was on it and then left, or was it when Garth Ennis left? I can't remember. I didn't read Hellblazer for long. Me and a few of my friends read a lot of Vertigo stuff when it first came out. Animal Man was my favourite. I loved it. I remember skipping college one morning to go into Glasgow to get the new issue of Animal Man, and then getting back to Paisley in time to go into college at the morning interval and just pretended that I'd slept in. No, I went to get Animal Man because I wanted to know what happened to Ellen Baker. Kids, go to school. Not go to school. Comics aren't as important. No, it's. I mean, I think that's one of the things that make the uniqueness to what Tony and Wade were doing at the start. I think that's one of the things that endeared it to people. It felt like because it was so different. So different from that sort of over stylized extreme superhero stuff that was going at the time. Jack's not wearing lycra and covered in pouches, like Cyclops was at this time, or he's not carrying an aerodynamically impossible gun or anything. He's just a regular guy, and I think because Jack was a regular guy, it made him a little bit more relatable. As I said already, I think when I was on before, I didn't have any tattoos before I became a fan of Jack. And Jack influenced me that way a little bit. There's a couple of shirts that I had in the late 90s, early 2000s that I bought because I thought, Jack Knight might wear that. Jack could wear that with black jeans. I think so. I think the combination of Jack's character and the style of what Tony was doing and the richness of James's writing, I think it endeared it to a lot of people, and is probably why I think so many Starman fans think of it as their favourite series, because it is so special.
There's more to it. It's, and the two issues, and we're going to move on to the second one in a moment, is that other comics didn't have these interludes.
Of course. Yeah.
I mean, they're interludes, and they're that palate cleanse between arcs. Yeah. Like, okay.
This is the periods. Yeah. This is the periods, just after 0 Hour, when Superman had died and come back to life, and it just became, and I like that period of Superman. I'm very fond of it. And it fulfills a need, but it was, it was the soap opera thing. You read one triangle number, you went to another triangle number.
I'm a Legion fan. You read those, man.
Yeah,
they gave you cues. You had to read them. And,
that's it. Back and forth between Legionnaires and Legion of Superheroes, and it was fine. But as you say, like, this was, the interludes and stuff, they were built in. The times passed when they were done by different artists, which gave Tony Harris time to catch up and all that sort of stuff, gave him breathing space. It was very unique and very different to what everyone else was doing. Occasionally you would still get other fill-ins in other comics, but the good thing about Starman was that the fill-ins and I'm sure James talks about this in the text pages and the letters pages, by doing stuff like the Times Past and the David interludes, it meant, as you say, there was a bit of a palate cleanser, and it never felt like... Because I remember there's an issue of the Avengers, roundabout, I think it's round about the time of the Korvac saga.
Yeah, and all of it. It's a fill-in issue drawn by Sal B. Seaman. It's Iron Man, Cap, and Black Panther fighting a bomb, stopping a bomb.
And it's terrible because it totally ruins the rhythm of the whole thing when you're reading it. And James obviously was aware that such things would happen, so he planned ahead and thought, right, we can do this. So I like to think that while he was scripting issues 3, 4, and 5, on another notepad he was writing out his plan for issue 5 and issue 6, because he knew that,
Oh, yeah, I think you're right. Because the next one we're doing, folks, is the First Times Past. And I know there's already a hint, visual cue to, and we'll get more cue, references to somebody that will appear in one of the Time Pasts.
Yes.
Yeah. So he's seeding it.
Yeah.
But now, folks, we're going to move on to issue 6, which is the First Times Past. Okay, now on to issue 6. This is cover dated April 1995. Again, executive editor Jeanette Kahn, cover artist Tony Harris. Is a great shade cover. Beautiful. I mean, I love Tony Harris's covers. It's a Times Past, and this one is titled 1882 Backstage Back Then. Creators on this one is different. It is writer James Robinson, pencilers Teddy Christensen, Kim Hagen, Bjarne Hansen, Christian Helgaard. I hope I pronounced these right. Teddy Christensen is inker, colorist Gregory Wright, letterer John Workman, Bob Pinaha, and Ken Bresnak, editor Archie Goodwin, and he has an assistant on this one, Chuck Kim. Main character is Mr. Black, the Shade. Guest star, Oscar Wilde. The villains are the Pepper Trube, Carloon, and Tom. Other characters appearing: Jack Knight, Jason Mayville, and Annette Mayville. And now back to me and David talking about Times Past. All right, folks, that's the basic stuff and synopsis of 6, and we're going to start on this one. This is the First Time Past. Times Past I love talking to David, but because I like the flashbacks, because the nerd in me once I was like, okay, that the Shade is friends with Oscar Wilde is one of my favorite. This is kind of what the Shade up through the painting, as you said, is we're getting to know the Shade. And Robinson is he's a big part in the first arc, and him and the issue before this, and David have him and Jack have a long conversation.
Yeah.
But now this is letting you know that Shade is incredibly important to this comic. He is probably, other than Jack and Ted, the most important character.
Yep.
So, it's a good story. Oh, I'm going to start with the art. I don't know this person. I don't know of anything else he ever did.
Me neither. In my head, in my memory, I thought it was Ted McKeever that had drawn this.
That makes sense. I didn't think that, but now that you say it, I would think this was McKeever.
Yeah. But reading it this afternoon, and before we record, I thought, oh, hang on, it's not, because it reminded me very much of. Did you read the Eclipso ongoing series in the 90s?
Yeah, on and off. I checked that out. Yeah. I like Eclipso. He's one of those villains I think can lead I'm not a big fan of villains entrance books because they don't work.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I have a vague memory I think I was having a bit of a Mandela effect sort of moment, because I think it was confusing this in my brain with, I think there's a 2-issue sort of flashback story arc in the Eclipso ongoing that has a very similar look to it, especially that opening panel when we see the snow falling in Opal. Excuse me. So I think I've been thinking about that. I'll have to dig that out and have a look at it, sort of scratch an itch. But no, Teddy Christensen, I can't think of anything else off the top of my head that I've seen him doing. So I'll have to go and look. I wonder if he maybe did a Starman Mystery Theater.
Maybe. I've only read the first arc of that and the Starman story. I have the first trade, so I would like to read more. I love Guy Davis's art.
Yes. And an acquired taste. I remember when I was reading first reading Starman Mystery Theatre and sort of thinking, these people are all really lumpy. But it got to the point a couple of years in when Guy wasn't doing a story arc, and I was like, what? Here's Guy Davis.
Well, see,
writing to my MP to complain.
What I like about it is I read it and I went, this is just a detective comic.
Mm.
You know what I mean? This is like, I read Mystery religiously.
Right.
You know, there are certain, my brother's a big detective fan, and there are certain detective comics that is just a guy figuring out a puzzle, which I think are amazing. I'm reading the Gotham City Year One by Tom King and Phil Hester.
Yes, that before.
Oh my God, it's just a detective thing with Sam Bradley, and I didn't know Sam Bradley was half black.
Yeah, I mentioned after we talked about that on the last episode I was on, Peter put every issue of that into my standing order file in the shop. And
I will shut up. I think you will enjoy it. It is.
And I was like, I haven't. Work's been a bit quiet the last couple of weeks. I'll get back to them. So I haven't picked them up yet, but I intend to. Now that Sergeant Rock and Human Target are finished, I might be a bit more flexible.
Oh, how is that, Sergeant Rock?
I haven't read it yet.
True comic fan. It's a mini-series. I'll read it when I have all 6.
Exactly. There are so many mini-series in my long boxes that I bought, in the 90s and 2000s that I've still never read.
Oh, I was there at the birth of those suckers, man. It took about 3 or 4 years of all the Marvel mini-series in the 80s when I finally go, why did I buy that? Why did I buy that? And then there were gems, like I don't know how much of a Marvel fan you are, but I'm
a big fan, yeah.
Okay, the Gargoyle miniseries.
Yeah.
That was good.
Yeah.
That was really good. He was one of my favorite defenders, though.
Because when a lot of those miniseries were coming out, they didn't get the sort of distribution in the UK was so patchy. Like, I didn't know any comic shops at that point, so it was really just the regular books that were turning up. I didn't see any of the miniseries at all, but I remember when I first went to comic shops and started seeing them, it was astonishing. I mean, I've got a few of the Marvel Premiere trade hardbacks that collect stuff like Kitty and Wolverine and the Magic and I think the Dazzler and Beast miniseries. I think I've got that collected.
That's actually a good one too.
Yeah, but Gargoyle was a character I was a big fan of. He would have fitted into Starman very well, wouldn't he?
Yes, the old man that got turned into a gargoyle. Because that's what I always loved about him, that he was like 87. He was an old man when he became a superhero.
Yeah, and I remember.
And how much he cared. They really, everybody. I think DeMatteis was writing it then.
I think so.
Yeah, I think it's DeMatteis.
He wrote the Defenders for years. Yeah. I remember, I think when I was on before, I talked about the period when I started becoming a hardcore comic fan. And it was Marvel driven by Secret Wars and Spider-Man and His Amazing Friends. And I remember at that very early point buying the final 2 issues of the Defenders. And just being like, I'd only just met Gargoyle, but I was devastated by what happened to him in the final issue.
Oh.
I'm not sure what his status is these days. I'm not sure if they've brought him back.
In the latest run of Iron Man is dating Patsy Hellcat, and they're fighting Korvac, and Tony has to form his own team, and Gargoyle is one of them.
Oh, right. Well, Peter, if you're listening, you can stick those issues into my standing order.
Cantwell's the writer. I bought him for a while and didn't read him, so I was like, I got to stop. I'll read him on the app one day.
Right.
I did like the first couple. They had Alex Ross covers, and I'm a sucker for an Alex Ross cover. So.
Same. I know. They know what they're doing with that anyway. We should probably get back
Let's get back to this. This is the first time pass, and it's a shade one, and it's set in 1882, and as we said the first time you're on, Opal City is a character in this piece.
Yes.
And we get a little history lesson about more and more about Opal City.
Yeah, the French Quarter, as it were.
Their French Quarter, and I like how he asks Oscar Wilde what he thinks about it. Oscar Wilde says what, and then Oscar Wilde gets a history lesson. Oh, it's about our French immigrants. It's actually 3 streets.
Yeah.
And it's like, is that actually really necessary? But no, it's Robinson layering the cake and going, this city is very important. If I'm going to make, you believe that these heroes love Opal, and the Shade
Yeah.
loves Opal, and the
Yeah.
family that represents, you need to know everything about it, even minutia about the different neighborhoods, that it is the most cosmopolitan city you have ever been to. Like you said, there are no suburbs. It's this isolation.
Yeah.
It's in isolation, and it is unique. And it loves its hero, the man from the, the star, you know what I mean? There's all these little things. And that a villain would be one of its protectors. Like, nope.
Yeah.
I don't care. Blow up Metropolis. Nuke Star City. Don't give a shit. Don't come to Star City.
Yeah.
Don't come to Opal City. But
there is that line, isn't there, in a much later issue, which you'll get to eventually, I think, when you see the Shade being angry and crying, "You hurt my Opal."
Yeah.
That's kind of it's sort of it does a very good job of sort of this issue does a very good job of simultaneously humanizing the Shade and making us aware of just how powerful he is and how far he's prepared to go.
Oh, and then we'll talk about the reward he gets for doing this mission.
Yeah.
It is so... I forgot that when I read it. I went, oh, I remember that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like this dude. He's twisted. There's something... He's ancient and evil, but...
Joe, it was... Reading this issue was the first time I'd read an issue of Starman with the Shade since I'd been watching Stargirl. So I found myself...
Hearing the actor's voice?
Yeah, imagining Jonathan Cake playing it. And it wasn't too much of a stretch, to be honest.
I've only seen clips. I really need to watch seasons 2 and 3.
It's very good. I've just since I last spoke to you, I finished season 3, and gee whiz, as we say here, gee whiz. The last 3 or 4 episodes of series 3. Oh ho ho!
You know what? I got to do it. I just got to. I mean,
it's good.
I also like that they give the Shade is kind of like for hire.
Yes. I like that the way the little boy. I mean, it's a game of two halves, isn't it? It's very front loaded. There's a lot of dialogue at the start, and then it's a little looser. It's not as dense in the second half. But I like the fact. What is it? The little boy says, "You've been known to intercede when people have problems," and then he says, "I have money, rather a lot of it, and I have problems." Yeah. So it's the Shade almost has a bit of a reputation already.
Yeah. That he's like the Don or the criminal you go to in town that does things that you can't pay a normal person to do.
Yeah.
Which the kid is like, and the kid's like, you don't need to kill him. Because he asks him straight up, do you want me to kill him? No, I just want you to get my sister away from him.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm not.
And it's a thing that I feel I should comment on. I mean, our Dickie Swift, as we come to know him, this is only issue 6, 7th issue published. James is completely reinventing the Shade, essentially from scratch. He's been a cartoon background villain at best previously.
There's no backstory for him really, other than he's having a good time.
Yeah, it's a blank. He's working with a blank slate. Like the Shade who appeared opposite Jay Garrick in the 40s is nothing like the Shade who came back in Flash of Two Worlds. He's nothing. He just pops up a few times in the 70s and 80s. He's nothing. So James it's kind of like what Mark Waid did with Max Mercury in the Flash. He's taken a long established character, and if we ever have time, you and I can do our Max Mercury podcast.
Just do a Young Justice one and add all the Impulse stuff into it.
Yeah, he's really got a blank slate to work on. But this is only the 7th issue published, and he's already sketched in massively, and he remains very consistent throughout the rest of the series. And
he doesn't really change. There's not a. He is the Shade that he gathers more friends, which is new for him.
Yes.
Because he becomes incredibly close with not just Jack, but with the oldest O'Dare.
Yeah, with Matt, and then obviously there's the suggestion that he's going to become better friends with Hope.
Yeah, and that he's had true friends before. and he understands their value. Like when he introduces the thing about, I didn't like him at first. Then I realized he was a lot like me, and I found I liked him immensely.
Yes.
You know, he likes, you know, and that we're going to find out that he was friends with an ancestor, you know, with the town's first sheriff, which is, you know, and that he, again, another character. And that he's fair, you know, and that he's friends with Wilde makes sense. There is a sense, I think that Robinson is showing you is, if you want to figure out the Shade's sensibilities,
absolutely,
this is a good one for you.
Absolutely, yes.
He's a lot like Oscar Wilde, and then in the story, a lot like Philip Marlowe. Yeah,
he has that irreverence to his sense of humour. You know, there's that. You know, I'm sure you'll be familiar with Tom Baker. There's a quote from Tom Baker. I think it's in the Who's Doctor Who documentary when Tom talks about the Oscar Wilde sense of humour, where someone asks, "Can I get a divorce?" and the other person says, "Yeah, we'll sort it out on Tuesday." And then the same person says, "Are there any chocolates in the house?" And someone says, "No," and they have a nervous breakdown. It's that peculiar sort of very English, slightly ironic, detached. Are you clever enough and paying attention enough to realise that this all isn't entirely serious? And the Shade captures that perfectly. He's a very Oscar Wildean character. You know, you can imagine him stepping out of, you know, Lady Windermere's fan, or, you know, the Reports of Being Earnest or something. You can imagine him walking through the background. He's very funny. I love him. I really do.
And they're hinting at, well, my Dickens knowledge is not the greatest, so I'm not sure which character.
I'm not sure either. I mean,
is it Edmund Drood?
Yeah, I think there's another reference to that in a later issue. I'm sure there is. Hang on. Didn't you once say you were the basis for one of Dickens' characters before you gained your singular abilities? Yes, that was Many a Summer Gone. I mean, the fact that Charles, this is something I've forgotten. Charles Dickens was apparently there when the Shade got his powers. Now that's something that I don't remember.
I don't think they ever show it to us. I just think they say it.
I don't think that ever gets referenced again, because have you had the time to read the Shade series since we last spoke?
The 12-issue one that came out later. No, I've not. I've thumbed through it because it's got some great people working on it.
Yeah, I might have to revisit that one and see if
it's in there. Because I kind of wanted to not read now that I'm. Well, God, that'll be years from now. I need to read it before then. This project's gonna take me till my retirement, depending on when the United States government decides when our retirement, my generation's is. Right now they're going, you can wait till 70. Fuckers. But I do like it, and that, you know, Wilde is kind of hinting at. We're getting a hint that he's about to, you know, he knows someone similar.
Yes.
And that's Dorian Gray.
Of course, which is obviously a reference to the poster arc that we mentioned earlier.
Oh yeah, because they're doing that. And the other day on YouTube I found, oh good God, it was an BBC adaptation of the Portrait of Dorian Gray. Jeremy Britt didn't play Gray, but he played a painter that Gray knew. Oh, and Derek Jacobi plays a mutual friend of theirs.
Is it Basil? Is that the name of the artist?
Yes.
Basil's the artist, and is it Sir Henry or something like that? That's the other guy.
We're played by Jacobi.
Yeah. I think I've got that on DVD somewhere. I've never watched it. Now you mention it.
It was really good. I got sucked in. Yeah. I got sucked in. It was very good. I heard Jeremy Brett, and it was like, shit, I want to see him play something other than Sherlock Holmes or the dude in My Fair Lady, which are the only two things I knew him before.
Yeah. He's also in a very early episode of The Incredible Hulk.
Really? Really? Okay. I don't remember about it. I was a little kid when that came out and was.
That's a reaction. That reaction face could become a meme. I could screenshot that. Reacting to surprising news with this meme. Yeah, it's a very early episode. One of the women from Land of the Giants is in it as well.
Lee Merriweather.
No, she was in the time tunnel.
Oh, that's right. I had someone post it and goes, "What is this?" And like 1,000 people. He's a Doctor Who fan and he didn't know what it was. And like every Doctor Who fan from both sides of the ocean went, time tunnel. It was just a shitload of time tunnel.
Well, see, God, this is all the tangents today. I first saw the Time Tunnel when it was repeated by STV, Scottish Television. They showed it through the night when British TV got deregulated and went to 24-hour broadcasting in the late 80s. Time Tunnel was getting shown at 2 o'clock on a Friday morning. So I was video recording it, and that was the first time I saw it. I was about 15. I loved it.
Irwin Allen has good production values.
And of course, Whit Bissell's in The Magnificent Seven, which is a glorious little bit of trivia.
Oh, that's right.
Kirk, and he's also in a couple of episodes of the Incredible Hulk. Anyway, enough of the tangents.
All right. Okay. So let's. But I like the relationship between him and Wild. Wild being a little creepy with the little kid.
Yeah.
It's how old is this kid supposed to be?
16, 17, something like that, I think.
1880, that wouldn't have been that.
Yeah.
It wouldn't have been illegal.
Yeah.
But it is we did say this was Louisiana, so it may not be illegal now. Sorry. I live in the South, but my state at least has a minimum age for marriage. But the kid is great, and this kid comes back, right?
Do you know what? I can't remember.
Because I was expecting to see a certain last name be dropped.
Yes.
I was like, is this the first time we hear Ludlow?
Yes, I had a niggle and I couldn't remember. I was thinking, because I remember that there is an early issue of the Shade miniseries with children involved, but I can't remember. There's one detail that doesn't stick. I suppose as we progress with the rereading and the revisiting, we'll probably find that out, I think.
Yeah, but I like this kid.
I know
he looks. I like the character design. Wild is perfect. That they keep him never straight on. He's always in silhouette or 3/4. So you don't have the guy goes. I don't have to make it accurate. I just got to I'm giving you a profile. You go.
Yeah.
But the kid
is.
It's like, I mean, I don't know. It's just there's such a style to this that I feel like also with the muted with the choice of colors, the yellows and the browns in the background, that this is somewhere in the past. I mean, that's what I'm getting from it, and I don't know if that's what they're doing. That it's not modern light, so when the street lights are very yellow.
Got you. Yeah. I was reading it as a sort of, maybe a sort of golden hour, late in the day sort of conversation. Because the shadows are quite long in that first. It's actually. Have you ever been to Paris?
No, I've never been out of the United States.
I've been to Paris as recently as 2.5 years ago, and I'm actually going there on Wednesday, believe it or not.
Okay.
Flying back on Thursday, and this little scene it feels very authentic. Paris has lots of little corners and little squares that look like this little spot where they're sat just now. I don't claim to be an authority on the city by any stretch, but this feels very authentically French. You can imagine sort of all these little cafes and stuff.
And we have and I could see this being New Orleans. There are places like this in a lot of U.S. southern cities. Like if you went to Charleston,
sure,
it'd be like. And I grew up inside D.C. and D.C. was designed by a Frenchman.
Yeah.
So there are circles and corners that at one point very much looked like this and have now probably are looking like it again.
Yeah.
But I can see that, and I think going back to Opal City being a character, I think one reason, and I'm just guessing here, that is they pick different artists when they do these times past because they want to try to give every era of Opal its own look.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
Yeah, that Jax looks like Tony Harris's art.
Of course, yeah.
But the 1880s should look like this when we're going to see, like other characters we know from the 40s. It's going to look like this. There's a 40s one that's kind of a dark story.
Yeah.
Is it a 50? It's a 50s story. It's set in
and they got I'm right thinking. Oh God, I should have this before I say this. I should have checked it. Didn't they get Russ Heath to draw one of the other ones?
Oh, gotcha. Yeah. That was like one of the 50 science ones, that Starman's back, and it may even be set Is it? No, because Gene Ha does the one where we find out that spoilers, folks. That ties into the Black Canary Starman team-ups from
Gene Ha
the
one is
60s.
fantastic. Gene Ha's a an artist.
Oh my God, I can't recommend. Have you read Top 10?
I have. I look to my left. I have a couple of hardbacks on the shelf. So
okay, I think it's his best stuff from ABC.
Right. I'm a big fan. He did a couple of issues of Starman. He did. Am I right? I think he did one issue of the miniseries, the Shade miniseries. I could be wrong on that.
Yeah. I think
but I like him. I remember there's a kind of there's a photorealistic sort of quality to what he does. I remember being very when he popped up back in the day.
He's great, but I think that's what they're doing. They want to kind of give you a different look. But let's move on because we want to talk about this. Because the circus performers, the performers are also a little preview of what's to come.
Yeah.
You know, because he's battling basically these would be circus freaks.
Yeah.
Or sideshow actors. There's a gypsy woman.
Paige Brown, the skin tone of the dwarf type that's standing on the shoulders of the clown. You know, that's
terrifying.
Yeah, he looks like a little mini golem or something, doesn't he?
Yeah, there's something about it, and then you go in and this guy looks like Nero, and he's just he is the living embodiment of sloth. And that shade is, I'm not sure if these shadows that are going through these panels in this are just the shadows that are natural in that theater, or something, how shade is moving through the building, not being seen.
Yeah, I think you're right with that. I think it's about both. I mean, I love page numbered. I love page 9 as he's just sort of sliding through and past everything that's going on. You know, the girl dancing with her tambourine, and then he arrives to.
And that's a brothel or something.
I think.
Yeah, there's a lot going on backstage of this theater.
Yeah, absolutely, Jinx. But but yeah, I see what you mean about Nero with these curls and his, you know, and he's just sort of sat there again with someone who's far too young for him. He's odious, isn't he? You instantly dislike him, and you're kind of glad that the Shade has gone there to deal with him.
And it's the Shade is, and you can. Shade doesn't really say anything. He's just like, I'm here to get the girl, kind of. This is, you know, you don't want to mess with me. Yeah. It's that hero movement in the movie, but it's the Shade. He's a thief because that's how he earns his money. Yeah. Yeah. You know, that's how he makes a living. He does favors. Yeah. And then he goes to Central City or goes to Keystone and messes with Jay Garrick just because it's fun. Yeah. Amazing. You know? But he finds this man so disgusting that he knows, and he warns him. It's like the Equalizer movies, you know. It's like he comes and he tells a dude, that it's Shade's Dirty Harry moment, you know.
It's that it's actually, it reminds me in some ways of, it's a bit of a modern Doctor Who trope as well, of like, you know, right, you know, I can imagine the 10th Doctor sort of stomping in and saying, right, well, you can't say I didn't give you a chance, you know. Yeah. There's a touch of the modern Doctors to it.
Yeah, it is. I think this could be Capaldi or Matt. I'm a Matt guy. Matt can be. I liked it when Matt got threatening. That was kind of my thing. Yeah. But there's this great line where he's talking to the dude and he asks, Loon goes, "What if I refuse?" No. You misunderstand. This isn't a request. Nor suggestion. I am telling what you will do. Yeah. And then Loon walks the door. Tom, get everyone. This fellow needs seeing to. And I should mention, I'm splitting a portion of my money. And he's telling me I'm giving 10% to my people. So if they have a vested interest in killing you. Yeah. And Shane just goes, really? I'm shivering with fear. Yes. And then we get that. How about you? And then it's a 2-page spread of total terror.
It's fantastic, isn't it?
And he could be saying this understated. I hear him saying this very understated. And how about you?
How about you? Yeah. You can hear him hurrying it, can't you? Yeah. I mean, this is the page that I think made me think it was Ted McKeever. There's a touch of
I can see that too.
There's a touch of the Clive Barkers almost to the imagery as well. You know, it could be like something from one of the Hellraiser movies, or
yeah, because this made me
scary.
This made me think, and I asked you, is his powers come from Nightshade? Same dimension as Nightshade.
Yeah, because you asked. I listened to your conversation with. Was it Paul?
Paul. Yeah.
Paul. Your exact conversation with Paul this afternoon. So I remember you saying that. I'm not sure. I'm not familiar enough with Nightshade. Peter might know. I'll ask Peter.
Yes, because I'd like to know, because these. Yeah. Was this coming out? Was Suicide Squad still coming out when this came out?
I think it was gone, but now I think it finished quite soon after War of the Gods, and that was 91, till end of 91, 92. Been gone for a few years, but then.
Oh. Yeah. Sad. One day I will do a Suicide Squad podcast. Just for that one.
I bought issue 30 of the Ostrander one when I was in London last week. Plugged a gap right in the middle. One of the Janus.
Oh, really?
Collective or connection, whatever it was called.
Yeah, are you close to a complete run?
Yeah, I've got the first trade, so I'm not worried about the first 8 or 9 at the moment, because I had them when I was younger. I had them when I was 14. I don't have them now.
Yeah, I sold them on
a long time ago. I've got the first couple of trades, but issue 30 was the only actual.
Good.
Later on.
Yeah, when I sold all my comics, and I had the first 2 trades when I sold my run, I did keep the DC Comics Presents with the Forgotten Heroes and Forgotten Villains, because that's not reprinted in the trade.
Right.
So I have to read that. When I do rereads, I start with those and then do the Secret Origin.
Sure.
Because that's just, But he pretty much takes care of these people.
Yeah, he doesn't mess about, does he? It's he gets rid of all the stooges very quickly, and I like how he, there's a brown panel at the bottom, page 17, where he's creeping through some of the scenery, that's backstage at the theatre, before he squares up. And one thing that struck me actually, panel 2 of page 19, looks as though Peter Schneeberg could have drawn it.
Which on page 19? Because mine does not have page numbers.
Let's see. It's Shade is approaching Loon, and Loon is saying, all right, if not hot lead, then cold steel. And the white dies, that looks like it could have come out of a much later Peter Schneeberg issue.
Yeah, I could see that.
Yeah, but it's I like how they're kind of walking through the I don't know, would they call it a gallery or a balcony or whatever above the stage. That's quite. There's definite Talons of Weng Chiang vibes, isn't there?
Yeah, okay. I'm glad I'm not the only one thinking that. Yes. Yeah. Still one of my favorites. I will always love it, problematic absolutely. Or not.
It's one that I remember very well from first transmission. Genuine behind the couch moments.
Even the giant rat.
Yeah.
Well, I used to. I
was probably about 4 years old.
Okay, that makes sense. When I was little, we had.
Of course.
I got you. When I was little, my brother turned me on to Ultraman, the Japanese show.
Right, I'm aware of it. I've never seen it.
Okay, but there was a different guy in Rubber Suit Monster every week, and the guy would turn into Ultraman and bite the giant monster, stomping on whatever city in Japan it was supposed to be.
Yeah.
And I would get freaked out by the monster, so I would carry this little black and white TV and plug it in and sit underneath the kitchen table while my mom made dinner. Because she's like, you're gonna have nightmares. Christ.
You'll laugh at this, but my formative Doctor Who scary moments are Deadly Assassin, Wen Chiang, Fang Rock, Invisible Enemy, Invasion of Time. Do you know, this is a true story. I have never eaten a prawn in my life.
Because of Invisible Enemy? I don't like seafood, but in Gallifrey's Most Honor, I refer to that monster as that fucking prawn. Because it's the worst monster ever designed on Doctor Who. It's not, and honestly, I don't think it's there's no close second.
When I was probably about 4, and Saturday tea time. It was I was old enough by then, and I'm sure that if when I turn up on Gallifrey's Most Wanted, we'll talk about this sort of thing a bit further. But I remember genuinely and being terrified. And The Invisible Enemy was a really late one to come out on VHS.
Yeah, it was.
It really was. And I remember getting the VHS and getting to the end of episode 2 or 3 and being, and I remembered, and I was in my 30s by that point, and I hadn't seen it since I was about 4, and I remembered, because I remembered the sound and the music and I was transported. I'm getting tingles even thinking about it.
Oh my God.
But I've never eaten a prawn to this day.
Oh my God. I think it's remember when they put it out on DVD and they redid the special effects, and I said,
yeah,
you're not going to fix the prawn?
The prawn? It's terrible.
Oh,
anyway.
Yeah. All right, let's get back.
Let's get back to the
he's
shade.
just so
he goes through them, and then he confronts Leon, and he goes for him with his sword, and yeah.
And he tries to sword fight the Shade.
Yeah.
But he takes a shot at him, and the bullet goes right through Shade, and it's just like, and that's that panel. His panic is that panel you're talking about.
Yes. Yeah, it's great, isn't it? I haven't yet. Brilliant. And Shade just marches towards him, and it's just like, because the Shade, you can imagine, the Shade probably didn't even break a sweat or even, start breathing heavily. He was just, this is a walk in the park. The Shade could probably do this with his eyes closed.
Oh yeah, and he's just standing there, and the little girl is next to the little girl, and and Loon is landed on the top of this big devil head, and there's all these dead bodies around this set piece.
Yeah. And then he has that brilliant, looking back in these days since, I want to try my best Jonathan Cake impression. Looking back in these days since, I feel perhaps that killing the entire troop was a bit extreme, although perhaps not. It's glorious. You have to love this guy. I mean, I remember my sister very early on kind of having a bash at reading Starman, and she wasn't too impressed by him. She thought he was a bit too, because I think there's one of the Shade's journal pages when he talks about killing someone that had been baiting a bear, and you think, yeah, quite right. That shows you the measure of the Shade. He's a good guy, really. If there's an unfairness or a bit of an injustice going on, or someone's just kicked a dog in the stomach, he's going to punch that. He's going to take that guy out. He knows what's important.
Oh yeah, and but then we get two little endings to this. The one with Shade.
Yeah.
And it's just he's gotten the.
Yes, he's got
the rose, and my monetary price was a nice one too, 10%. And Oscar Wilde goes, of what? Everything.
Yeah. Yeah. The rose thing, like that's something I'm going to have to refresh my memory on, because he has a little rose garden going on later on, doesn't he?
Yes, and he's gotten this singular rose.
Spot. Yeah. I think some stuff lingers in the memory a bit more than others, but that was I think when you reach Grand Guignol and all that, we'll have to keep our eyes out for that and see if that gets mentioned again.
Oh yeah, I do want to say that because Shade's Journal is so important, and I've watched people. I watched Near Mint Condition, and Omar is he's like us, the guy that hosts is like us with Starman.
Right.
This is the greatest comic, blah 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 blah. His wife for his birthday one year, for Christmas one year, his wife read it because she reads comics, but she had never read it. So
wow.
So she read it so they could discuss it.
That's brilliant.
It's a great gift. Isn't that a great gift? That's love. That's like, I've been fighting it because I kind of know it's not going to be, but she didn't read the text, and he just kind of went, oh.
Right.
It's like, and I'm yelling at the TV, what? You got to read Shade's journals. They're really important.
It's like reading Watchmen without reading the text pages at the back. You don't
I
get
know more than a few people who have done that, and I just look at them and shake my head and go, we can't be friends right now.
I mean, the first time I read Watchmen, I didn't read the text pages at the back, but then the second time I read it, I did. And the second time was basically immediately after the first time I read it, when I was so caught up in the visceral stuff with the pirates and all that. And the second time I read it, I was like, ooh.
Mm-hmm. Well, I was like that when I got a from Hell in the big trade with all the notations in the back.
Yeah.
And I read that straight through, comic and then all the notations.
Right.
Like straight through, because I was like, I think that's one of my favorites. I love Watchmen. But I think From Hell is kind of one of my. I like it more than I say I like it or Extraordinary Gentleman.
Right.
It's
just, I've never read it.
Really?
But it's over there. I do own it. Someone gave me a copy years ago, so I'm going to go and get it just now. Now that we're talking about
it. You've heard all these theories, but he uses a bunch of the theories, and I liked it.
Right. Hang on. Let's have a look.
I sent Billy, or no, I didn't send Billy, but I had the color. They printed it in color in 20 volumes.
Right.
I sold them on eBay. I said, you know what? As pretty as the colors are, I want to read. It doesn't have the notation, so I'll read. Next time I read it, I want to read it with, I'll read everything again.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the one I got. It's a tome.
Yep.
It's gorgeous art.
Let me see the date.
Stunning.
Third printing, right, hang on. First published by the Campbell Comics 99, first Knockabout edition, me too. Third printing, July 2001. There we go.
Right, mine might be older than that, but it's the early version of that.
I can't even remember. Oh, this has
the movie cover, doesn't it? Does that have the movie art on the cover?
Yes.
Mine does not. Yeah. Mine's before that then.
Yes. Now a major motion picture starring Johnny Depp and Heather Graham. Yeah, there we go.
Which isn't a terrible movie.
Right, cool, that's fine. It's off the shelf. It's moved closer into my...
I don't know if you're not, Jack I know people that are like Jack. My wife likes true crime.
Sure.
But I watch old British true crime, and she's like, what? It's just true crime, except they're not in a trailer park. Fuck.
I bought this a few months ago on recommendation from a friend, but I've not read it yet. I don't know if there'll be enough light on. I maybe have to move my phone so you can see it properly. Hang on.
I listened to that on tape. I listened to her read that book on tape on Audible. Oh, really? Yeah, it's good as shit. Oh yeah.
This has been sat for a couple of months since someone I knew recommended it. So I'll also move that further to.
Oh yeah, it was on Audible and I got it for free, and she read all of it.
Cool.
It was very cool. Because it really humanizes the women. It really shows you. It's really kind of lets you know that it's not. It's not. It's
exactly.
The story should be about them.
Yeah, no one talks about the victims. They just.
Yeah, it was really eye-opening. Some of them.
And
it was detailed. It was like, wow, how did you find that out?
I'll move that up the pile then. Yeah. Good.
All right. But I do want to talk about the second ending, which is Jack standing at his apartment window, reading, and the only time Jack appears in this issue, and the only words he speaks is when he's thinking, because the last thing they do is Shade asks Wild, that tale you were going to tell me, the other fellow who enjoyed prolonged life, you never did relate it, didn't I? Well, that's easily remedied. It was a while I was at university when I first encountered, and then Jack is thinking, there's a page torn from the Shade's journal, and this passage of writing ends, and I've got to wonder why, maybe. And then Jack just says under his breath, maybe I'd rather not know.
Yeah.
So,
that's a great bit of seeding and planting, isn't it?
Yeah, it is, and it's like, yes, it's Dorian Gray. I don't need to say it out loud. Jack's an educated man. He's figured it out. And he doesn't want to ruin it. And is he saying, I don't want to know because I don't want... He's just read this horrific story where he's killed all these people. Is he horrified, or is he's like, I don't want Dorian Gray ruined for me?
Yeah.
Because Jack could be either one.
Of course. I mean, I wonder if James Robinson, how much planning ahead he did, or how much rereading he did of what he'd already done, because it's very, he's so consistent over the whole thing. There's very few threads that get dropped and or spun out and not tidied up. So I wonder, because obviously the poster demon, spoilers jumping ahead, and then obviously all the stuff that Hamilton drew and all that kind of thing, that all really ties into the story in a way. It's interesting to think about, how much planning James did, or how much was maybe reacting to what you reread. It's interesting.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a lot of both. I think I'm a big believer in serendipity in art. I've done set designs and had to make changes at the second, and it's been, I'm glad I had to make that change.
Yeah.
Because that's a far better idea. And so I've had people go ask me why, because I made the decision quickly. And I think sometimes planning is great, but I think sometimes in the moment you either make a course correction or you add a flourish, you add a little more spice to the mix, and you come out with a better ending. And I mean, he's told his first arc in 4 issues. As I'm doing this, I have not recorded me talking about issue 3, but that is the end of the first arc. 4 issues.
Yeah.
But
it's 5 issues. It's the 0 issue through to issue 4.
Is it? Because is 4 really part of that, or is the fight? I thought the fight ends in 3.
Remember?
I'll have to look. But he's put in these interludes.
Yeah.
And he had
right.
He's put in this interlude, the talking with David. A day in Opal. You're right. It is, because 5 is a day in Opal.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the fight with the mist, you get flashes of what's gonna happen, and they hit the first hint of one of the first hints of the circus.
Mm-hmm.
And then issue 4 is a day in Opal, and it is the epilogue to the story.
Yeah.
So
it's tied in the full forwards. Yeah.
Yeah, but we've seen hints of the circus. We've seen hints of Turk County, and this one is about the performers, and we're going to go right into Jack going, going out to Turk County for the first time.
Yeah.
And it's this book is this, and then the painting are kind of near each other, and it's very supernatural and dark.
One thing that something I remember is when I did start to read it through, and I think 27, it was around about 29 was where it had been reached. But I remember getting to the second arc and being impressed at the way. And this is conversation. Don't put this in because it's a bit too spoilery. It's the realization that he was telling the same events but from a different perspective of each person. I remember thinking, oh, this is good. And then Jack and Ted got stuck in the poster. I was like, right, I'm hooked. This is the best. This is great. But to follow on, the circus stuff's very interesting because obviously that ties into a few other seeded plots and stuff that are resolved much later on as well. It's all very organic.
Yeah.
It rewards rereading and such like,
Yeah, it does. I mean, and I'm enjoying rereading, and it's making me reread them a couple times as I kind of go back and forth because when I have guests, I'm jumping ahead and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But it's just, it reminds me why I love Jack and why there's it has, in my living room, there's a shrine to Starman. My wife doesn't care. She's like, she gets it. She really, this one she appreciates. This one she doesn't got to roll her eyes. This love. Other ones, Doctor Who, give or take. She's crochet and Law and Order and other things, but she understands this that the care I have for this character is so great that it's like we had Princess Bride. It's not our theme to our wedding. We got married. We had a party. We got married the next year. We had the big party, and the day after, because we couldn't invite too many people because it was going to cost us a fortune. But we rented a local movie theater, and everybody came and watched The Princess Bride.
Oh, lovely!
Yes, and my people came dressed as characters.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, and it was an old 1920s movie house. A friend of mine managed.
Brilliant.
Yeah, But she gets the love for this, so I get animated when I'm rereading him sometimes. Oh, it's this story, and she's like has no idea what I'm jabbering about, but she listens politely. All right, so hey, that's the first Times Past and talking to David, and I think you were correct earlier on in this well edited down episode because the tangents galore being stripped away after we speak.
But it's a pleasure to talk, man. It really is. I said to Peter before he spoke to you, "Look, you'll have a great time. You'll feel like you've known him for years."
I hope he felt the same way. We had a good time talking.
Yeah.
No. But it's nice because there are people who love this book, and I've gotten the most. I'm not the podcast isn't making these great astronomical numbers. But I've got people who are like, I can't wait for the next one. I was like, oh, good. I'm glad I'm doing a good job because the ones I'm doing by myself, I'm a little like, how do I talk about 16 pages of a Steve Ditko, Paul Levitz ripoff of Captain Marvel? Yeah. Yeah, I know what you mean. Our numbers recently have gone up. Our first week listens which used to be in the 60s or 70s generally. They're now the last month or two we're clearing 100 downloads in our first week within a few days, which had never happened before. So I think part of it is it was that way with Gallifrey's Most Wanted. It took me a good 2.5, 3 years. Yeah. Because what you have to get is, my friend Vic is like, we're not doing so much on the individual episodes, but I said, how many episodes are being downloaded a month? Yeah. Total. Exactly. And she goes, wow, it's like 5 times that, because there are people like you and me who discovered it and then had to go start at the frickin' beginning and listen to everything. Yeah, so we've got a couple of guys that are kind of doing that, and they're commenting on the Instagram posts as they're going along, which has made me really glad that I've done all that stuff. But it feels a little bit like shouting into the void sometimes. But the way, we wouldn't all be doing this if we didn't enjoy it ourselves, Oh no, and I met, and when I started doing Gallifrey Most Wanted, I've guested on 4 or 5 other podcasts. I got a guy who comes in and talks Doctor Comics from another podcast. I met you guys, Billy, Martin Gray. He's been on my show. Jennifer DeRossi's been on my show twice. She's going to come on in April, and we're going to do the Zatanna search for her dad. Oh, good. Yes, we're going to cover that trade because that needs to be talked about because that's Gardner Fox. And Zatanna. Because that's it's over 2.5 years since we did those stories. That's crazy. Yeah, I thought about asking to do it, and then you guys did it, and I went, shit. Well, I mean, this is the thing. There's going to be a bit of, we're going to do the All-Star Squadron eventually, Yeah, but it'll be years after Billy and them did it. It's fine, Is Billy planning to do Young All-Stars? I don't think so. Oh, really? Oh. Well, because we're tomorrow morning. That's what I'm waiting for, because I really liked Young All Stars. I liked the first half of it, yeah. Second half was a little. It's a very satisfying, very chewy read. Well, if he's not, I'll ask him again. It's like, if you're planning to, then I'll say I may call dibs on it. Because he, my feeling with Young All Stars was that Roy, because he was using new characters, he seemed to be spending less time trying to fit it all into issues of all. Exactly, thank you. Because he was doing his own thing, and it was a lot more enjoyable as a result. Because the last year and a half or whatever of All Stars, not very good. Yeah, right. It's not very good. I know. You've got a year of Crisis and Infinite Earths crossovers, and then it's just more Secret Origins. And Roy's determination to make everything tie in and fit in together, and it's like, Roy, no one cares about this Superman story from 1942 that you've got Tarantula and Firebrand turning up, and instead, it's his insistence on doing this sort of stuff that probably made the Crisis necessary in the first place. Well, and he could have he had picked a great selection of heroes that never had the spotlight. Just stick with them. Because I read it because I wanted to see what happened with Firebrand, Shining Knight, Steel, Robot Man, Tarantula. Yeah. That's what I was reading it for. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Doc Midnight was cool because I thought Doc Midnight and then Our Man or Doc Fate were the one member of the Justice Society in the book. Yeah, and he did some really good stuff with Our Man that subsequent writers built on, the addiction stuff and all that kind of thing. It makes sense. It's a drug. Yeah, I like that. Yep.
He did some brilliant stuff with Rex, and I think it's basically I think it was more to do with a change in what DC editorial wanted. I think they felt that they'd moved. You know this yourself. They go through these periods every so often when they don't want to use the Justice Society, and I think it was then. It was like, part of me always thinks that did they do the Crisis just to get so they didn't have to employ Roy Thomas anymore?
Well, I mean, his book sold. All-Star was a popular book.
Yeah, and Captain Carrot's first issue was massive.
Oh my God, yeah. It's still, he did good work. It just, and I agree with you with Young All-Stars that he created characters, tweaked some obscure characters. I mean, I can't remember which ones were real or not.
Yeah.
Which ones have been? Neptune Perkins was a real character. Was an old character.
Real. I think Roy created Tsunami. He created Iron Monroe. Danny the Dynamite obviously had been around before.
Did he? And he took the name of Flying Fox from another character.
Yeah, I think from a Batman retcon story.
Yeah.
The latest, I don't know if you read it, the latest issue of Roy's Alter Ego magazine is all about Young All-Stars.
Yeah, I got it. I haven't read it yet.
Yeah.
I get behind on those, but I'd make sure I buy them.
I read a little bit of it in the bath this morning. I will read a little bit more of it in the bath tomorrow. It's good for bath time reading. But no, for what it's worth, if you any pool Billy, you can sort of say I'd definitely be interested if you kept going with Young All-Stars. I'd be very, because I think it's a very overlooked series.
I do too. I think the art's stunning in the first half of it.
Yeah.
I mean, that's there's a lot to say about it. And there's a lot of I read it religiously.
Yeah.
So, and I read Manhunt. I liked it because when I read Ajureko, whatever his name is, that Manhunter series in the 90s.
Sure. Yes.
Which I loved.
Yeah.
That was kind of, and Iron Monroe is her grandfather, so there's a connection.
Yeah.
Right. And
There's a lot. Roy always moans about his ideas being strip mined, but there's a lot of respectful stuff been done with him. So, do you know what? If he doesn't do Young All Stars, come on, you're doing. It's another series set with the JSA set during World War II. That's the whole point.
Sure. Oh yeah. We're gonna, me and him record tomorrow. And we're covering the last 3 issues of Freedom Fighters.
Right. Cool.
Which is fine, but some of them have been good and some are bad, and we're gonna do some more All Star comics. So.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, we're still we're still a year or two away from all that stuff.
I can't wait to hear what you guys think of it. That shit's so fucking good.
I think that's what's good is you're covering this stuff, but then we'll get to it in a while. So it's not like we're going to be doing the same comics at the same time.
Oh yeah.
That's that helps.
All right. Well, let's take this. Okay. Well, let me. Well, Dave, thanks for coming on. I enjoy it. I'll have you back soon, at least, definitely for the next Talking to David or Times Past. I don't know when they come in. I know there is another one in the first volume. There's another Times Past in the volume one omnibus.
Yeah, I think it's the Ragdoll and JSA one. I think isn't it?
Yeah, I think it's the Ragdoll one. So,
I can't remember the next Talking with David, but it won't be too far off. Ross, thank you for having me back. It was a pleasure. It's been, as it always is, so good to talk to you. I'm sure we could probably talk all night if we felt like it.
Yeah. I have about 2 hours of recording that I'm going to use about 45 minutes. To get two comic nerds with a similar taste, and then have some cross nerd stuff on the side. So we had a lot to jump. We jumped all over the place. And
there are literally piles of donkey hind legs lying all over the place as a result of this conversation. I'll ask anyone that's listening to check out the Earth 2 podcast. But also I'll give a shout out for my pal Kenny's Doctor Who podcast, Pieces of 8. But he's on hiatus for that at the moment, but I know he's working on some more episodes, so that'll be back before too long. So I would give a hug while I'm here.
Awesome. I've listened to a few episodes, but I listened to you and a couple other comic ones, Billy's and stuff like that, and I jump around, but I've had to trim some of my nerdy podcasts down because I'm going to do some history ones or some true crime. I need to.
Yeah.
I got a long bus ride. I take the bus home nowadays. So, well, folks, that's it. But please check out my other the other parts of the Stop Let's Team Up podcast, My Legion Adventures on Thursday, as I reread from the beginning till I get to the end of Legion by my 80th birthday. And a weekly series, the weekend series, which I don't do every weekend in case my wife needs me to pay attention to us. But I will, but probably that's where I do my Marvel talking, because everything else seems to be DC. So until then, folks, remember, be safe, be smart, please be kind to each other, and read some comics.